No, I was about to say like then like from there it takes us to to those sorts of questions like is there a way of living which is which has the quality of, let's say, effortlessness or the quality of freedom? Maybe it's too much to ask, but like we, because what is freedom, Michael? Sorry.
It starts at the spine axis, Dionis.
Sorry to put that question, but I just have to ask. I mean, I am Dionis Comas in Girona, Spain, along with Michael Little in Bangalore, India. Welcome to Background Rhyme, a podcast exploring the metaphysics behind the work of the poet Kay Ryan. Today we will be talking about her poem How Birds Sing. Kay Ryan served as a poet laureate of the United States from 2008 through 2010. She has long lived in Marin County, California. The poem was published in the year 1996 in her book Elephant Rocks. So today, How Birds Sing by Kay Ryan.
How birds sing. One is not taxed. One need not practice. One simply tips the throat back over the spine axis and asserts the chest. The wings and the rest compress a musical squeeze which floats a series of notes upon the breeze. There's our musical poem for the day, Dionis. How birds sing.
Very birdy. This, very bird-like.
So, yeah, on the face of it, it seems like a very simple poem. In fact, perhaps one of, maybe even Kay Ryan's simplest poem.
Yeah.
But we might not think that after we talk about it for a long time.
But then maybe we never stop talking about it. So like that's the.
Well, we shouldn't start. Right, maybe that's what the poem's about. Not talking about the poem. Yeah. The breakdown of the poem is that the first line is one is not taxed, one need not practice. So that almost sounds like she's talking about, something like a self-help thing, like, you don't have to make effort. You just, you don't have to suffer. One is not taxed. One doesn't have to suffer necessarily. One need not practice. One simply tips the throat back and over the spine axis and asserts the chest. That's the first sentence.
This is a very obvious thing, but she's kind of, it seems that she's almost just describing the bird, right? Like tipping the throat back and over the spine axis and asserting the chest. So it, like in the first glance, like it's almost like you're seeing the bird, like just doing the bird thing, right? And that's the first image, right?
Yes, exactly. And then the second, there's only two sentences. The second sentence, the wings and the rest compress a musical squeeze which floats a series of notes upon the breeze. So again, it looks like the anatomy of the bird creates this singing, and the poem appears to be as simple as that. Let's see.
Yeah. Yes. Let's see. Let's see. So, maybe like the first sentence is already. I mean, you were already pointing to that, but one is not taxed. One need not practice. I mean, so the first thing that came to my mind is like, why, like it's very strong, that 1 1 1. So the first three verses of the poem, they have that 1 1 1, and I kind of, it kind of made me think, like, why this. It's kind of a very a very strong one here going on, and so it's very quickly she's not talking about the birds only. So very quickly we know that he's talking about perhaps ourselves, like, or whatever that one is, like, because otherwise why repeat one three times, like. And so uh, um, the first thing, one is not taxed, one need not practice. It seems that she's questioning the whole effort, uh, punishment, reward, effort, achievement machine that we tend to endeavor as humans. Like that's the first thing that came to my mind, because it's like normally we tend to think of effort and practice, and once we have all that thing going, then maybe we achieve something that is of value, or that of last, or something that is good. So we all have our plans or projects anyway, so that's all okay. But she's kind of making already a question of that. And so I think that this was my first the first thing that I saw, that this is talking
Yeah.
about ourselves, and not, and already questioning all our effort machine,
Our
and
efforts. Yeah.
our efforts, and saying that this, whatever that we are going to talk about today, is not about that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think I would surely agree with you. It, yeah. So there's an ambiguity of whether this is. I mean, clearly this is a metaphor. In a way, it's a cliche, like a cliched metaphor of the birds singing might be, it might stand in as a metaphor for, let's say, a poet writing a poem, or a musician creating new music, or whatever, a creative act, because that's often underlying. That reading is almost there in all of her poems, and so. Yeah, that she's giving a nod to the sense that we actually have to let go for this creative process to happen, and that it's naturally very effortless. But there is an oddity, and there's always this level shift. I think when she says, one simply tips the throat back over the spine axis, she makes it sound very normal, that's the easiest thing in the world. But for us, that's very strange. To put the throat behind the spine is like is about the oddest thing that a human body would want to consider. That's called whiplash, or worse, I don't know. But of course, birds do that. So she's describing, I think maybe she saw that in the bird, and she said, "Oh, I got to write a poem about this." There's something, that oddity, and yet it's so effortless. It's so natural. It's what could be more natural than the song of the bird and the wind.
So that,
but
that
as it relates to us, it's a quantum leap in some odd direction, I would say. There's more to say about this axis, but
no.
That's the first thing.
I was about to elaborate a little bit about that, like that this what she's presenting might be both very difficult and very effortless at the same time. Like this might be the experience for all of us, like when we are creative, and it's not for the artists alone, but in general. Like that, it's, if it would be super easy, like anything else, I don't know, like waking up in the morning, then this is not the type of effortlessness that we are talking about, right? Like the effortlessness of making your breakfast or the effortlessness of going on a walk. That's not exactly the same effortlessness. So the effortlessness that we are kind of discovering is something that is odd, like that kind of weird going back to your back, let's say, but that back to your back, it's very weird, and yet it is not your will that will do it. It's not your effort. It's not your machinery that we've talked about. It's not your regular ways of achieving things won't open you up to inspiration. Let's use that word, like, because that opening up to that artistic or creative realm, like it's hard. It's not. So it's both. I love that idea that you put here, because it's both very difficult, and yet if it's effortful, you kind of go into more. You close yourself more, and you're less creative, and you're why is the poem is not coming to me, or why? I mean, then it's like it's a kind of a closed end.
Yeah. I was at a Christmas party this year, and one of family members wanted everybody to bring a poem and share a poem, and this is the poem that I shared. Of course, because Kay Ryan's probably my favorite poet, but this is also the easiest poem of hers to hear read out, because it's so simple. I mean, that's the standout fact of when you see her other poems, which are not so straightforward. This one, on the face of it, is very straightforward, and beautifully so, because it's so musical, which we'll get into maybe some of that about the rhyming and everything. But so it is beautiful and simple, and she, there's always a risk, right, of saying something beautiful and simple at the same time. But she's hidden some things in there. These little, like this back. Why do we have to go back? For the bird, it's perfectly natural physiologically, but the metaphor starts to ask questions about, okay, what does she mean? If I'm taking it as a metaphor for me as a creator or as a person trying to navigate life, why do I have to go back over this axis?
Yes.
It's an interesting, it's an odd and intriguing, vision. And then asserts the chest, period. That's the end of the sentence. And you got to assert the chest, which of course in the human sphere, that's like, you mean I've got to strut, even before I've done my creations here, I got to, it's this contrast, right? Of probably where she thinks we're going, and then it's funny.
No. This is incredible, because all those apparent contradictions, they are there, right? Like that, you have to. It's difficult, and yet it has to be effortless. You have to go back to your back, like back to your spine, back to your center, back to your, and yet this has to be a kind of an assertive, expressive, expansive move at the same time. So at the same time, it's a kind of a return, let's say, or a going back to yourself, or a going back to your being, a going back to your essentials, or whatever you want to call it, and yet at the same time with the same, because it's not a little bit and a little bit. It's the holding of that tension. It's the holding of that contradiction. That
Ah,
at the same time that you are going exactly like that's a weird thing. At the same time that you're going back to yourself, you are offering yourself,
yes,
right?
right.
Like
So
you're
you're
asserting
finding
it.
your source. Yeah, it's like
You,
the muse, right? I mean, if you're talking about the creative
yeah,
endeavor, it's like you're waiting for the muse, and then when the muse comes, maybe she's taking that apart, little bits by bits, these tiny little, and she's suggesting the muse comes because you've gone back into yourself to find your voice, um, but it also comes because you act,
exactly.
or it's in the action, which we can't
Yes.
really explain. That there's no separation between muse and actor or inventor or creator. That act, that pushing the chest, opening the chest, opening the heart, or whatever. Of
Yeah. I
course, it's
mean,
cliche. She would, yeah,
might
but
be it might sound a
it's
little
beautiful in a
cliche,
way.
but it's in a way, yeah, because it's if you take out all the like it's just it's a very simple. You were saying this that this is a very simple thing, but it's all so complicated what we're talking about. Like so what we're talking about is almost impossible. I mean, how unusual it is that you can, uh, let's say, go deeper into yourself and at the same time give the best of yourself. See, like normally we say, okay, when you go back into yourself, I don't know, you do introspection, you do, you close your eyes or whatever it is that you do when you do introspection, or you go on a walk and it's very, you are on your own and you just feel whatever it is that you need to feel, or you go back into your being, or whatever it is that you understand for introspection. I don't know, but normally that's what we say. We say introspection. We think of all those images, but here in this poem, she's holding an unusual tension. Yes, going back to yourself, and yet singing, asserting the chest, being sharing. I don't know, like
Yeah.
as you were saying, acting, like not recluded into your world, like not just passive or anyway.
Right. Yes, I think
No,
going back and going forward are happening at the same time.
at this,
It's one movement actually. Going back and forward, there's a kind of It,
it's quite amazing.
that's fascinating. I mean, that we could talk about
It's
forever because going back is also like maybe paying tribute to where you've come from, understanding where you've come from, your roots, your upbringing, your influences, all the history of the creations that came before you, and so that back means the back, which is the spine, which is the center of the organism, and going into your body or embodying who you are, whatever that may be, right? I mean,
you
we're
were
talking
saying
in abstractions, but
no, but you were
yeah,
talking about how she's explains all the anatomy, how bodily it is about this poem, how like not like a metaphor, but she's basically talking about the body of the bird, even in
yes,
even in the second part. So that goes in keeping in what you're saying. Like she's almost saying, go back to your body, just you know realize who you are in the most basic form, like breathing and
yeah,
digesting and
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
No, right?
yeah,
Like that very
absolutely,
simple fact. This very simple fact of like we don't like it's a very simple recognition that you are alive. That's a very simple
yes.
thing in your body.
I think she's, I think she. It's interesting. there's another part of this poem which has a similar kind of duality of like of these two factors moving together, and as I'm going a little bit back into like her approach to writing poetry, because she talks about, and others who reflect on Kay Ryan's poetry, they talk about metaphor and rhyme being the two engines of her work, because she famously uses a lot of rhyme, as this poem does. And of course, like all poets, metaphor is critical, and her metaphors can be really astonishing. This is clearly a metaphorical poem, and yet it almost seems like she's just describing a bird, and we can walk away with it. That itself is like, it stands on its own, how beautiful that is in a way, which I think is what makes this poem so remarkable. So, but I wanted to just read a quote where she talks a little bit about both metaphor and rhyme. Also because this poem has more rhyme in it maybe than any, because every line rhymes, and we can note that, taxed, practice, tips, throat back, spine axis, chest, the wings and the rest, compress, a musical squeeze, which floats, a series of notes upon the breeze. And, hold on for a second. So there's like, she's unabashedly gone for rhyme here. Now, so she's talking about, in this quote, about how she was developing as a poet. And she said, the problem for me was that I willed my poetry at first. I had too much control. But in time, the benevolences of metaphor and rhyme sent me down their rabbit holes in new directions, so that my will, my intention, was sent hither and yon. And in that mix of intention and diversion, I could get a tiny inkling of things far beyond me. So it's just interesting that metaphor is kind of the intellectual content, but rhyme is more like, can you bang on the drum? Like it's not the content, but it's this, it creates connectivity. When one word rhymes with the next, it resonates maybe in the hindbrain or something, and we hear, one is not taxed, one need not practice, one simply tips the throat back over the spine axis. And so it makes it very musical, which of course is what the poem is about, a musical bird. The bird is creating music. So she's doing what she's saying.
This is Background Rhyme Podcast, and today we are talking about the poem How Birds Sing from Kay Ryan. I completely agree with everything that you said, and it's completely like in keeping with what the poem is proposing, I think, especially for what we were saying about the effortlessness about and how this because she says in the quote that she used to use her own will, try to control everything, and now in this poem she's saying you don't need practice, you don't need your will for that, right? And and what you were saying, like all that musicality is kind of informing her of how to proceed, not the other way, not her logic, not her intellect, not her will, not her yes, all that attitude is not informing her. Like what's informing her is that background rhyme, as we titled the podcast, all that musicality that is behind everything, that participation in that musicality is what's it's allowing her to. I think in the quote she said to find, deeper things and unusual, surprising things that she couldn't expect to find at all with her will.
Yes, right. New dimensions. Yeah,
New doors.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's, I mean, before we leave that point
Yeah.
altogether,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are some
Go.
there are some lies in this poem.
Okay.
Because I mean, Kay Ryan often starts or delivers her poem in a voice that sounds like they're going to teach you something, a very confident voice, like, this is how birds sing. One need not, one is not taxed. One need not practice. One simply you follow these steps kind of thing. One need not practice is interesting because it's true in all that we've said. It's the heart of effortlessness. But like any good artist, she practiced her craft for decades before she got any success at all. And she's famously somebody who kept writing poems for 10, 15 years before anything got published. And then, of course, she became, rewarded with the highest accolades. She found her own voice because her vision is quirky, her voice is unusual, and she just worked incredibly hard with the help of her partner Carol, who read her poems and encouraged her. And she worked alone. She used to, she'd make her breakfast and then she'd still be in her pajamas and she'd go back into bed and write with pencil and paper. And so she practiced a ton. But, so that's the little lie, the little white lie in this, is that, because you always wonder about that voice that she puts, which is intriguing. She's going to start, telling you about the universe and all the dimensions of the universe. And there's a point at which you're sort of like, can I trust this voice totally? I find that very interesting,
Yes.
that she does that in such a subtle way that when you first read the poem, you don't catch that. And it's not very strong in this poem.
Totally.
It might be there. It might be there.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
Do you think that we can carry on like the second sentence? Shall we move on?
We must.
The wings and the rest compress a musical squeeze which floats a series of notes upon the breeze. I mean, this is incredible. Like again, that the wings and the rest. I mean, this seems to me like the most effortless image, and also kind of soft and tender. Like it's really not. Not hard and not. It's very, very much expansive. Like the first part of the poem was the sound of it. This one was more like it sounded more like going back to your back, like, and it the sound of it was more. Yeah, a bit more strong and more assertive, like asserts the chest. But in that beginning or the whole sentence, I think the wings and the rest compress a musical squeeze, like which flows. Everything seems to be like just coming out, like the song of the bird,
Yes.
and for me, like. The unusual, I mean, this might be a little overreading of the situation here, but a very unusual thing is that a series of notes upon the breeze. It's like I mean, why say the breeze? Like, why say upon the breeze? Like, it could be just the singing, the series of notes. We don't need to know like where where are they going, you know. but but in that case, she's just specific about where are they, where is this singing going, or where is it taking place, and she's making the point that it's those notes are going upon the breeze, and so of course the breeze is not an object, like it's not physical. The breeze is a kind of a, if it's a space, it's an empty space. The breeze is everything. Like it's almost like saying those notes float upon everything or float upon everywhere, or I don't know, like something like that. And so for me, she's kind of opening everything up towards the end of the poem. Like she's at the beginning, she's going back to the go back to yourself. Then she's singing, she's making the bird sing, and then at the end she's just saying, and all this is open. All this is upon the breeze.
Right.
It's an
Yeah.
open end.
Yeah.
It's a free. It's almost like saying everything. All this is related to freedom or related to
Freedom.
openness. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
It's a,
What do you,
it's a kind of a celebration. I think you're right. I mean, we're in danger of talking well, because it's our job to do this, but you almost don't need, it just speaks for itself.
yeah,
It's so effortless and so beautiful. I mean, it really is. It's a simple thing that's very beautiful, and but yeah, the breeze, and it's breezy, right? It's yeah, it's she's really conveyed effortlessness, because that's perhaps what the poem is about. And you tread on difficult terrain if you're going to try to write a poem about effortlessness. Yeah, I think she gets it, because she's so simple with this poem. And effortlessness has a breezy aspect to it. Oh, she's just effortlessly laughing or cooking up a meal, But then there's the other aspect of effortlessness, which is in the larger context of life. Can we do this difficult life with effortlessness?
Mm.
Doesn't mean we're saying the whole thing would be effortless. I don't think anybody's proposing that. But could this life be engaged effortlessly? And what would that mean? Not just the bird on the branch, the organism, the physiology, but the human experience of all of the loss, the challenge, the difficulties, the fears, the overwhelming sensations, emotion, everything. What would it? I know I'm riffing a little bit, but
No.
she's brought us to this point where could mean anything. You could interpret this, and surely you can interpret it as a human experience. And so maybe we begin writing the poem at this point, because we're lifting off onto the breeze, but maybe there's effortlessness. It opens up a lot of interesting questions.
I was
for
about
me,
to
and
say.
I'm sure for you.
No. I was about to say, like, then it like from there it takes us to those sorts of questions. Like, is there a way of living which has the quality of, let's say, effortlessness, or the quality of freedom? Maybe it's too much to ask, but like we, because What is freedom, Michael? Sorry.
It starts at the spine axis, Dionis.
Sorry to put that question, but I just have to ask. I mean, it's like, is freedom like in our life? Like, is freedom to like, I don't know. Like it's just when we are in that question, like when I think of my life, which is very much engaged, very much, like I have to work, we have to do things, like we have to respond to all the kinds of people, and like people that we don't like, people that we like, people, and so all sorts of relationships and activities, and so it's very much chained, like, I mean, it's very much entangled, as we use the word. So like I think that in that way effortlessness points to some sort of participation even within all this entanglement, that somehow that quality of effortlessness can be felt in all this participation with all this entanglement. Is that possible?
Yeah. I mean, I think of it in a way that we're looking to find our voice. And that's the case with a poet who's writing, any writer's looking for that writer's voice, and when they get it, it's this incredible magic in a way. But maybe that's there in our life too. We're looking to find our voice. Like, how do we voice the difficulties, like you could say, the entanglements, the struggle that's embedded maybe in our daily life, and certain things that are not as we would want them to be, but there they are. And how do we find the voice? Because maybe just finding that voice to that might be a key to freedom. It's not exactly like saying, well, I go and I speak out all my problems to a therapist. That may be a similar thing, or you write in your diary and you keep your thoughts down. There may be many ways, but I mean it also more just very generally, that if we could find our voice, the voice that is okay in the ambiguity, okay in the loss, not okay, but okay enough to be a voice, to still assert the chest, and I in a way, the bird finds itself after it's released what it's released, and then it's like, oh, I guess I'm a bird. It's like, I don't know. What do you think of this?
So no. That's very beautiful.
That it's partly about the voice, because literally, the voice of the bird. Is that the metaphor, or is that a way to look at it?
Are you in some way suggesting that there might be some sort of freedom in the very simple fact of saying, "I am here"? Sorry, but maybe this is overly. But it's almost like saying it's okay to be.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Acknowledgement. Yeah,
it's okay to be yourself. Like,
I mean, where else were you going to start from? Some other.
Look how many times we don't seem to be okay with ourselves. Look how many times we feel more the inadequacy than the harmony. Yeah. So many times. And so it's almost like saying, you're part of that harmony. You're part of that breeze. You're part of that, all the mountains and birds and all that song is in you. And it's like, it's almost like saying, why not just, here I am, this is my chest, this is me, like, but not in a arrogant or in a in an overly superficial way. It's just saying, a simple acknowledgement of being, let's say, and that is a kind of an allowance for that participation with harmony. Like,
Yeah.
would you say something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think again, it's the chest forward and the throat tipping back. That's why she's written this poem, to say those lines, because
Yeah.
it's like get back. Paul McCartney. When you see that movie where he invented that song in the studio, it's great. You can see him actually write that song and get back to where you once belonged. It in a way it's like, or yes, there's a value in this life maybe of the non-forward, because everything else is forward. We're obsessed with the forward, success, climbing the ladder, getting more, and all that stuff. And this is a different dimension, and it's not an opposite to forwardness. It may be just differentness. It's a different dimension, and it's hard to put it into words. But she's trying with poetry as best she can, and you tip your throat, like you're tipping a vessel of water or something, and maybe you find whatever that back might mean. But that word back is so interesting. She's got a poem called Backward Miracle. But it's just interesting, this notion of what does it mean? Like, what is that back? Because it's the forward as well, though. It's not one precedes the other. They both go together. You can't just, otherwise you're introspecting. If you say, okay, I've got to analyze and go back to my childhood or whatever and think it out, and then I'm going to work it out, and then I'm going to be strong enough to move forward. No. It's both, which nobody can explain how that could be possible. But I think it may be. It's like an acknowledgement of joy, but also of suffering at the same time. That really beautiful, like Beethoven or Mozart. I mean, it's just drenched with both joy and suffering.
Yeah. I think this is absolutely beautiful, and we will leave it like this. Perhaps that breeze is permeating like all our hearts, hopefully. I don't know, perhaps it's overly romanticized, I don't know. Anyway, thank you, listeners, for your time. This has been Background Rhyme Podcast, and today we talked about the poem How Birds Sing by Kay Ryan. How birds sing. One is not taxed. One need not practice. One simply tips the throat back over the spine axis and asserts the chest. The wings and the rest compress a musical squeeze which floats a series of notes upon the breeze.